Welcome into TYT's The Conversation. I'm Adrienne Lawrence, and I am joined by Encore Jen, co-founder and co-CEO of Kairos. That's a venture studio that invests in companies tackling the world's greatest challenges. Thanks for joining us, Encore.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Yes, and especially right now to have your knowledge and what you do with Kairos is fantastic. And I want our viewers to get like a full understanding of this. So we're in the midst of a huge housing crisis with evictions going on, and Kairos is working to fix housing. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so Kairos broadly has been really about helping solve some of the big problems that our generation has been facing. And frankly, problems that have just gotten worse since the COVID shutdown started. As you know, many of us graduated into the 2008 financial crisis, which was hard enough. And now you're coming into our second kind of once in a lifetime financial crisis. The problem is that with these shutdowns, people are no longer able to afford rent. We have millions of millennials out of jobs, and we've got to figure out how to make it through and get back on our feet. And so one of the things that we've been working on recently has been thinking about how do we get people a stimulus check now? Because we can't just wait on the federal government anymore. It just doesn't seem like anything's happening there. And so can we get something done today at the local level that can put money back in people's pockets? And so Adrienne, one of the crazy things that we figured out is that there's $45 billion stuck in security deposits. You know that thing you have to put up when you want to rent an apartment? $45 billion locked in security deposits that's just sitting there doing nothing. And meanwhile, people are struggling to pay rent. People are trying to get to the next month. And so we came up with a plan to abolish security deposits. And it's really simple. It's that we can actually work with local officials and say, hey, give every renter the option to take that cash back, use it to pay rent, use it to pay down debt. And don't worry, we can still protect the landlords because new innovations like some of the stuff that we've been working on at Rhino and other stuff allows you to take, for example, $1,000 cash deposit and instead replace it with a $5 a month insurance, right? Super simple, common sense solutions, right? And I think you and I have chatted about this, Adrienne, like people love talking about the crazy nonsense stuff, but sometimes it's just simple, common sense solutions that can fix these problems. And so we've just been on a mission to abolish the security deposit across the country over the last 9 months.
That is really cool. And it's funny because you think, oh, this is so ingenious when really, no, you're right. It's kind of commonsensical. Yet I think we've been following this old format for so long that we've kind of just gotten used to these things that we just know we just do. So it's good to have someone out there thinking, how can we maximize and change things up? And so something you had said was your company Kairos is like a reverse Shark Tank. What did you mean by that?
So we think a lot about starting with problem first, right? I think entrepreneurship at its best is about solving real problems facing real people. And technology at its best takes something that's a problem, makes it better, and then democratizes access so everybody can benefit, right? And our problem that we wanted to solve at Kairos, kind of in that reverse Shark Tank model, was how do we make life more affordable? Right? How do we give more people in our generation access to better healthcare? How do we create jobs for our generation when we're worried about, even pre-COVID, we had to worry about AI automating jobs. Now we just have every restaurant and leisure and hospitality thing going out of business. So really, I think over the last year, a lot of these problems that have been in existence for the past decade have just been amplified. And that's really what we're trying to solve at Kairos. So the security deposit effort is one. And to give you just, by the way, a little bit of, I think, hope, Adrienne, is that in just the last couple months, our effort has gotten this law passed in Cincinnati, in Atlanta. Governor Cuomo in New York passed it as an executive order. That freed up $8 billion in New York that people could take back and use as instant stimulus. And in the next couple weeks, I'm making an announcement with Mayor Garcetti from LA and Mayor Suarez from Miami to bring that same type of renter stimulus to people across the country, right? And so that's one thing. But we also have another problem which we have to figure out, which is how do we get people back into jobs? Unfortunately, a lot of restaurants, a lot of hospitality, a lot of travel industries have been devastated by the shutdowns. And many people in our generation have been affected. I think there's still 11 million people unemployed. Unfortunately, many of these jobs aren't coming back in the immediate future. So one of the efforts that we've also been launching at Kairos has been saying, can we create a program to train our generation for healthcare jobs that we know are both needed today and aren't going anywhere in the future? And so we've launched an initiative both in the UK and in the United States to train 10,000 people in each country as home care workers. And so it's this, again, common sense win-win. We need more people on the front lines helping take care of the seniors in our population. And we need jobs that aren't going away. Home care is this incredible entry point into healthcare because you can get started with not that much time of training, and it becomes an entry point to then grow into anything from a licensed practical nurse to a registered nurse, where you can start to make really meaningful income for you and your family.
That's incredible. And it sounds like it's a great opportunity for people to really, like you said, get that knowledge base so that they can stay employed and hopefully be happily employed. But something you also mentioned in terms of working in the UK and kind of getting that partnership going. And I know your background, you initially started in foreign policy. So how has your background in foreign policy really been advantageous as you look to solve the world's problems?
Look, I think for too long, there has been this disconnect between the private sector and Silicon Valley and that entrepreneur world and government. Right? And the truth is that many of these problems that we're talking about are things that government should be doing something about. And I think sometimes just political leaders get in their own way. And you see this across the world. And so if we can create more of a partnership where innovators and entrepreneurs can find these common sense solutions that you talk about all the time, and then work with policymakers to make sure that it's being accessed by everybody, right? Not just the select few at the top, but how do we make sure these solutions are available to everyone? Right? That kind of partnership is really powerful. And when you think about foreign policy, that's one of the things that makes things work. Because at the end of the day, economic ties are what influence most of foreign policy. And so if you can create these win-win solutions that are good for business and good for people, right? The government can play a really key role in scaling that. And you talk a lot about housing affordability. Most housing affordability policies, unfortunately, either hurt the landlord or hurt the renter, right? Those aren't sustainable solutions. With the kind of thing we're doing with renter stimulus, you can give back $45 billion to renters, but still keep landlords protected with a really simple insurance policy. It's kind of like when you rent a car from Hertz, right? Or one of these places, I think Hertz just went bankrupt actually. But if you rented a car from a place like that, you wouldn't put down $20,000 of cash in case you get into an accident, right? You have insurance. So why do we allow our landlords to take thousands of dollars out of our pockets when the average American barely has $400 for emergency expenses as it is, right? So again, it's just these common sense solutions that I think the private sector and entrepreneurs can bring, and then with the help of government leaders, really make available to everybody.
That is very, very wise, and hopefully it'll be something that will be adopted without question across the board. And so we don't have very much time left, but I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit since you are kind of the mastermind. What is your most irrational fear?
Gosh, I think the thing that scares me the most these days is people's inability to trust information anymore. Because when it comes to solving problems, the most important element is to start with an agreed upon set of assumptions on what the problem is, right? And I look at what's been happening like in this latest election, it sometimes feels like we're living in two completely different realities. And yet at the end of the day, most of us are just dealing with the same issues, right? We're just trying to get by, trying to make next month's rent, trying to start a family, buy a home one day, right? And if we can't even align on those simple things, I don't know how you solve these problems. But again, I think there's hope. I don't mean to be gloom and doom. I do think there's a way for us to solve these issues. One ask I do have for everyone watching this is, help us bring this stimulus to people across the country. Right? This is something that can get done today. We can put back $45 billion of deposits back into our pockets now and use that to get us back on our feet and out of this crisis. So anyways, thank you for having me, Adrienne.
Thank you for joining us. And where can the viewers find you?
So you can look it up at kairoshq.com, KAIROSHQ.com, or find me on social. There's a lot of stuff that we can do, simple, common sense things that can help us get through this crisis. So anything we can do to help, please reach out. And thanks again, Adrienne, for having us here.
Thank you, Encore.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.